For decades, Michael Jackson's name has been synonymous with perfection, flawless performances, record-breaking hits, and a voice that seemed almost otherworldly. But what if the story we know isn't the whole story? Hidden beneath the surface, locked away from the public eye, lies a collection of unreleased demos, songs that were never meant to see the light of day, or so we thought. These are not just forgotten recordings. They are whispers of a private Michael, a version of the King of Pop that existed beyond the glare of the spotlight, beyond the screaming crowds, and beyond the perfectly curated public image. In these tapes, there are lyrics that suggest secrets, confessions, and raw emotions the world never knew he carried. Lines that hint at relationships, struggles, and betrayals so intimate, they could change how we understand his life entirely. Imagine discovering a diary written not in words, but in melody, notes that reveal fears and dreams never voiced publicly. Every pause, every breath, every lyric could hold a truth carefully concealed, either by Michael himself or by those entrusted with his legacy. Fans have hunted for these hidden pieces for years. The internet buzzes with theories, leaks, and cryptic references. And yet, despite the relentless curiosity, most of these demos remained untouched, unheard, a mystery even to his closest collaborators. The question that has haunted the world since his passing is simple yet chilling. What truths lie buried in the music Michael left behind? Tonight, we peel back the curtain. We explore the vault of secrets that could redefine the King of Pop not just as a performer, but as a man. Some lyrics will shock, some will inspire, and some may leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Michael Jackson. But be warned, the answers you are about to hear are not always comforting. They are fragments of a genius mind, raw, unfiltered, and achingly human. And the biggest question remains: why were these songs hidden in the first place? The legend of Michael Jackson's private vault has circulated in whispers for decades. Fans imagined a secret room filled with gold records, personal memorabilia, and reels of unreleased music. But the truth is far more tantalizing and far more mysterious. This was not just a storage space. It was a shrine to secrecy, a fortress of creation where the King of Pop stored fragments of genius the world would never immediately hear. The vault's existence itself fueled wild speculation. How many songs were inside? Were there demos of hits that never made the charts? Or lyrics that exposed a side of Michael so private it was almost sacred? For years, insiders offered conflicting accounts. Some spoke of dozens of tapes, others of hundreds. Some suggested he left messages in his music, small confessions woven into melodies only he could fully understand. What made these unreleased demos particularly intriguing is how they contrasted with the Michael everyone thought they knew. The public saw a man in control, flawless, untouchable. The vault, however, hinted at a different story. Here was a man experimenting, questioning, revealing a vulnerability that stage performances could never capture. Some tracks contained simple lyric sketches, unfinished ideas, or experimental phrasing. But even in their raw form, they hinted at emotional depths that startled even longtime collaborators. One longtime producer, who worked closely with Michael in the late 80s and early 90s, recalled seeing handwritten sheets tucked into a pile of tapes. "I thought it was just brainstorming," he said, "but when I listened, it was like he was speaking directly to me, to the world. Only no one was meant to hear it yet. And that is the paradox of the vault. It was both a treasure trove and a warning. Inside were the pieces of a man unafraid to expose his fears, his regrets, and sometimes even his anger. It was a hidden narrative, a parallel life encoded in music, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. The question that gnawed at fans and insiders alike: were these songs kept secret to protect Michael, or to protect something else entirely? And if the vault were ever opened, would the world be ready for the truths contained within? The first hint of revelation came with one tape, unmarked, forgotten, almost discarded. Its lyrics were simple on the surface, yet hauntingly personal. A line about isolation, a verse about betrayal. And just like that, the myth of the vault transformed from rumor into urgent curiosity. What else had been hidden? What stories had been silenced? The discovery of Michael Jackson's demos was neither straightforward nor expected. They didn't appear in a flashy headline or a celebrity auction. Instead, they surfaced in quiet, almost accidental moments, hidden boxes mislabeled, dusty reels tucked behind years of forgotten equipment, digital files buried in archives no one remembered existed. The first of these demos to reach public attention was found by a former engineer who had worked briefly with Michael in the early 2000s. He had been tasked with cataloging old recordings when he stumbled upon a reel marked only with the letters MJ. Curiosity led him to play it. And from the first note, he knew this wasn't a simple outtake or throwaway experiment. This was Michael, raw, unpolished, and startlingly honest. The lyrics revealed glimpses of thoughts that had never appeared in interviews or public performances. Lines about mistrust, loneliness, and creative frustration hinted at a man burdened not just by fame, but by the weight of expectation. The melody shifted unpredictably, soft, intimate verses exploding into crescendos that felt almost desperate. Every nuance suggested a Michael unafraid to test the boundaries of his own artistry, yet reluctant to let anyone witness it fully. Soon after, more demos surfaced, each discovery adding new layers to the story. Some were collaborations with famous producers, others were solitary compositions penned in the quiet of his home studio. Each reel told a slightly different story. One revealed a Michael struggling with betrayal in his personal life. Another hinted at an untold romance, fragile and fleeting. Yet another suggested reflections on fame, obsession, and the dark shadows lurking behind the bright lights. What made these discoveries so tantalizing was the hidden messages embedded within the lyrics. Subtle wordplay, repeated motifs, and fleeting lines seemed to speak directly to those who knew Michael best. It was almost as if he had been leaving breadcrumbs, a trail for someone to follow long after he was gone. And yet, the recordings raised more questions than they answered. Were these truly unfinished songs? Or were they deliberate windows into a side of Michael that only the most attentive listeners would ever glimpse? The world was left in suspense. Each demo suggested a narrative, but none offered closure. Some fans speculated that the lyrics contained secrets that could rewrite Michael's story, exposing relationships, regrets, or even betrayals that had never been acknowledged publicly. And just as quickly as excitement grew, the mystery deepened. If these tapes had been sitting in vaults for decades, waiting for discovery, what else might remain hidden? What stories had Michael left untold? And who would have the right, or the courage, to reveal them? The tension was palpable. One unreleased line, just a whisper of a phrase, hinted at a revelation so personal, it made listeners question everything they thought they knew about the King of Pop. And yet, the full picture remained just out of reach. The question lingered in the minds of those who dared to listen. What else was lurking in the shadows of Michael Jackson's musical legacy, waiting to be heard? As the reels spun in the quiet of forgotten studios, a startling truth began to emerge. Michael Jackson's unreleased lyrics were not merely experiments in sound. They were confessions, poetic, raw, and profoundly human. Each verse seemed to lift a veil, revealing a side of the King of Pop the world had rarely glimpsed. There were lines about isolation that felt almost unbearable in their honesty. He sang of rooms empty except for echoes, of applause that could never fill the void inside. The contrast between the flawless, confident performer on stage and the vulnerable man in these demos was stark, almost painful. Fans had admired the perfection, but here perfection was stripped away. Here was the man wrestling with himself, his fame, and the relentless weight of expectation. Some lyrics hinted at betrayal, though it was never entirely clear by whom. Was it friends who had grown distant, business partners who had misled him, or perhaps the very world that adored him yet never truly understood? One particularly haunting line spoke of trust broken before the first note had even been sung, a phrase that sent chills to those who first heard it. The ambiguity made it all the more powerful. Michael's pain was universal, yet intensely personal. The unreleased tracks also explored love, fragile, fleeting, and sometimes forbidden. Unlike the grandiose love songs known worldwide, these were quiet reflections, private admissions captured in whispered melodies. In one demo, he seemed to address someone directly, almost pleading, with a vulnerability that made listeners feel they were intruding on something sacred. It was as if the songs were his diary, written in music, never intended for anyone but the person, or people, he trusted most. And yet these lyrics were not all sorrow. There were moments of defiance, bursts of creative brilliance that reminded listeners of the genius they already revered. Lines that celebrated resilience, the triumph of artistry over adversity, and a relentless pursuit of truth within himself. But even here, the shadows lingered. Every bright note was tinged with uncertainty. Every celebration tempered by the knowledge that fame could be as suffocating as it was exhilarating. What made these lyrics truly extraordinary was how they intersected with events in Michael's life. References to media scrutiny, to betrayals by trusted advisors, and to the unrelenting gaze of the public made it clear that these songs were not abstract musings. They were documentation, musical snapshots of a life under extraordinary pressure. Fans began to realize that these demos were more than unreleased songs. They were a hidden autobiography, revealing the man behind the legend in ways no biography, interview, or public performance ever could. And then came the lines that would ignite the most speculation. Lyrics that seemed to hint at secrets so profound they could challenge long-held narratives about his personal and professional relationships. Were these merely metaphors, or was Michael quietly documenting truths he could never speak aloud? The mystery was magnetic. Each verse, each chorus left listeners aching for clarity while simultaneously reminding them that some truths might never be fully revealed. By the time the final track in the first batch of demos was played, it was clear that Michael's hidden lyrics were more than just music. They were revelations, and just as listeners began to piece together the fragments of his private world, an unsettling question emerged. If these lines were so deeply personal, why had they been withheld from the world for so long? The answer, as always, remained just out of reach, leaving a haunting sense of anticipation for what might still lie hidden. Every great artist leaves traces of themselves in collaboration, but Michael Jackson's unreleased demos carried an added layer of intrigue, the people behind the scenes. Producers, co-writers, session musicians, each contributed to the creation of a world that most would never see. Yet their stories reveal as much about the hidden Michael as the lyrics themselves. Some collaborators spoke of sessions that were intensely private. Michael would arrive alone, headphones on, pen in hand, ready to experiment. The process was sacred, almost ritualistic, and anyone present quickly realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. One producer recalled a night when Michael worked until dawn, layering harmonies over melodies that seemed incomplete to anyone else. But to Michael, they were perfect expressions of his innermost thoughts. But the collaboration was not always harmonious. Rumors of disagreements, creative clashes, and even attempts to withhold certain recordings surfaced over time. Some co-writers felt they were kept in the dark about the full context of the lyrics, while others spoke of Michael's meticulous control over his work. He trusted very few people, one insider said, and even then, he only let them see what he wanted them to see. It was within this circle of collaborators that the mystery deepened. Certain demos, rich with personal confessions, were reportedly never intended for public release, not because they were unfinished, but because Michael feared their emotional impact. Some collaborators believed that if the world heard these lyrics, it might distort the way Michael was remembered. Others suggested there were commercial reasons, that record labels were reluctant to release music that deviated from the polished image the public expected. Even within these inner circles, contradictions existed. A producer who worked with Michael on a 1993 demo claimed that some lyrics were deliberately cryptic, meant to be understood only by those who truly knew him. Another collaborator insisted that Michael was leaving a trail, a series of musical breadcrumbs for fans to discover long after he was gone. The tension between concealment and revelation only heightened the allure of the demos. As fans and researchers began piecing together the vault's contents, a pattern emerged. The most personal, emotionally charged demos seemed tightly guarded, Tracks that hinted at secret relationships, hidden fears, or personal betrayals were often incomplete, abandoned, or deliberately obscured. The collaborators who handled these recordings became gatekeepers of an intimate world the public might never fully access. And yet, glimpses slipped through. Certain lines, recorded with Michael's unmistakable voice, suggested unspoken truths. Lyrics that discussed trust, loyalty, and betrayal resonated with those who knew him, even if the wider world could only guess at their meaning. Each collaborator's memory, each recollection became a puzzle piece, a fragment of the hidden story, tantalizing in its partiality. The tension between secrecy and revelation reached a climax when a previously unheard demo surfaced, one so personal, so revealing that even collaborators admitted its content was shocking. It spoke of vulnerabilities rarely seen, of a genius haunted by the very fame that elevated him, and of relationships that had been strained, sometimes irreparably. And just as quickly as this demo was discovered, questions swirled. How much did Michael intend to reveal through these songs? And how many secrets were still waiting silently in the shadows of his musical vault? With each new collaboration, each newly uncovered lyric, the legend of the hidden Michael grew. And yet for all the revelations, the vault retained its mystery. The collaborators themselves could only offer glimpses, never the complete picture. The world was left hungry for understanding, aware that the most profound secrets were still locked away, waiting for the day someone, or something, would finally bring them to light. As listeners began delving deeper into Michael Jackson's unreleased demos, it became clear that these were more than just songs. They were coded messages, intimate confessions veiled in melody. Some lines were strikingly direct, others cryptic, almost as if he were leaving clues to a story only a select few could decipher. Certain lyrics suggested experiences of betrayal and deception that never made headlines. He sang about friends who smiled while sharpening knives behind his back, of trust that crumbled like paper under the weight of fame. The metaphors were vivid, the emotions raw. Each line demanded interpretation, forcing listeners to question, was this fiction, metaphor, or literal truth? The ambiguity created a tension unlike any other, pulling fans into a labyrinth of speculation. Yet there were other lines that hinted at personal joy, fleeting moments of love and connection wrapped in cryptic phrasing. A lyric about whispers in moonlit rooms was almost poetic, but fans immediately wondered, was he recalling a secret romance, a private collaboration, or a memory never shared with the public? Every verse, every fleeting metaphor became a riddle, demanding attention, demanding emotional investment. Musicologists began analyzing the demos, uncovering patterns. Repeated motifs, unusual harmonies, and hidden phrases suggested that Michael's genius extended beyond melody and rhythm. He was embedding meaning at every level. Some theorized that the demos contained references to events in his personal life, coded messages about challenges he faced, and subtle warnings or reflections for those closest to him. But not all discoveries were uplifting. One particularly haunting line spoke of isolation in rooms full of applause, capturing the paradox of fame, the world's admiration juxtaposed against a crushing loneliness. The dichotomy between public persona and private experience was stark. Fans realized that the unreleased lyrics weren't just entertainment, they were testimony. They were the story of a man grappling with adoration, betrayal, love, and profound vulnerability, and yet the deeper one listened, the more questions arose. Some lyrics suggested conflicts with those in positions of power, managers, label executives, even close friends. Others hinted at personal struggles, heartbreaks, and disappointments that had never been publicly acknowledged. Each discovery raised another question. What truths had Michael intended to reveal? And how much of it had been deliberately hidden to protect himself, or perhaps those around him? The suspense built as fans tried to decode the intent behind these songs. Was Michael leaving breadcrumbs for those who truly knew him? Or were these lines merely reflections of his creative process, raw fragments that were never meant to form a coherent story? The ambiguity was part of the allure, a constant tension between revelation and mystery. Just as listeners began to feel they were piecing together the man behind the music, a new revelation emerged. One unreleased demo contained a phrase so intimate, so startling in its honesty, that even longtime collaborators described it as shocking. It hinted at a secret aspect of Michael's life that had never been documented. And just as curiosity piqued, the tape ended, leaving the world with an unanswered question. What had Michael truly been trying to say, and who was listening? The discovery of these unreleased demos naturally led to one of the most contentious debates in music history. Why were these songs never officially released? Was it a calculated decision by the industry, a deliberate act of suppression, or simply Michael's perfectionism at work? The truth, like the demos themselves, was layered, complex, and tantalizingly elusive. Some insiders argued that record labels deliberately withheld certain tracks. Lyrics that revealed personal betrayals, critiques of the media, or reflections on controversial events were considered too sensitive for release. Executives feared backlash, scandal, or a disruption of the carefully crafted public image. Michael, already a target for scrutiny and speculation, may have been warned that certain songs could inflame already tense situations. Others suggested a different narrative. Michael Jackson, ever the perfectionist, chose to keep these songs private. He was a man obsessed with artistic integrity, with ensuring that every note, every lyric, every vocal nuance was exactly as he envisioned. Unfinished tracks, raw demos, or deeply personal confessions might have been deliberately withheld because they were too vulnerable, too human, too incomplete for public consumption. The tension between these two possibilities added a layer of intrigue to every unreleased demo. Fans wondered whether the silence surrounding the tapes was imposed externally or self-imposed. Some demos contained lines critical of the industry itself, suggesting that even Michael's collaborators might have been hesitant to release them. Others were tender, intimate, and private, reinforcing the idea that he alone had the authority to decide what the world should hear. The debate became even more complicated when examining collaborators' accounts. Some described Michael as meticulous, controlling every detail of his music and rarely allowing unfinished work to leave his personal studio. Others recounted instances where demos were almost lost, hidden away in vaults, only to be rediscovered years later. The question emerged: if the songs were of such personal significance, why allow anyone access at all? And if the industry intervened, who ultimately had control over his unreleased work? Historical precedent added fuel to the fire. Many legendary artists have withheld tracks for decades, only to have them posthumously released, sometimes with unintended consequences. In Michael's case, the stakes were higher. His global fame, his legacy, and the mythology surrounding his life made every decision about what could be heard and what must remain hidden an act of enormous consequence. Fans speculated endlessly. Some believed certain demos contained secrets that could have reshaped public narratives about his life. Others argued that the songs were purely artistic experiments, moments of personal reflection never intended to tell a broader story. And in the absence of definitive answers, the tension grew, keeping the world on edge for every revelation, every leak, every fragment of sound that emerged from the vault. The mystery deepened with the discovery of one particular tape, a track so emotionally charged, so private that even those with access hesitated to discuss it. The lyrics spoke of trust broken, love lost, and fame's isolating grip. Was this a song Michael intended to release, only to be suppressed by the industry? Or was it deliberately hidden by him, a confession too raw for public ears? The debate rages on, unresolved, keeping fans and historians alike in suspense. And just as questions seemed to multiply without answers, a chilling thought lingered. If some songs were intentionally concealed, what else remains hidden? What truths are still locked away in Michael Jackson's private vault, waiting for the day the world will finally hear them? The tension is palpable, the mystery alive, and the next revelation promises to shake everything we thought we knew. As news of Michael Jackson's unreleased demos began to leak, an extraordinary phenomenon emerged. The fans themselves became detectives, analysts, and archivists. Online communities buzzed with speculation, interpretations, and fervent debates, each person determined to decode the hidden truths woven into his music. The internet became a labyrinth of theories. Some fans believed the lyrics contained confessions about secret relationships, hidden betrayals, or disputes with powerful figures in his life. Others suggested the demos were clues about Michael's own perception of fame, his frustrations with the industry, and his deep personal fears of isolation. Every cryptic phrase sparked 100 different interpretations, each one passionately defended. Social media and fan forums were ablaze with discussion. Lines that seemed insignificant to some were dissected with microscopic attention by others. Every metaphor, every subtle rhyme, every unusual pause in a recording became evidence in a virtual investigation. Fans debated the intent behind whispered verses, argued over musical patterns, and sometimes even traced personal events in Michael's life to particular lyrics. Yet, as the theories multiplied, so did the ambiguity. What one fan saw as a confession, another interpreted as artistic playfulness. A simple metaphor about walls closing in could be an expression of personal struggle or a broader critique of fame itself. The lack of definitive context made each interpretation tantalizing yet frustrating, leaving viewers caught between revelation and doubt. Some theories became almost legendary. Fans speculated that certain demos were Michael speaking directly to those who had wronged him. Others argued the lyrics were deliberate puzzles, meant to preserve his privacy while simultaneously leaving breadcrumbs for the most devoted listeners. One particularly haunting thread claimed that hidden messages in the music revealed entire chapters of his life that had never been publicly acknowledged. Each new theory fed the next, creating an endless cycle of curiosity and obsession. And then came the leaks, snippets, brief audio fragments that surfaced online, shared through fan communities often before official release. Each leak created new waves of excitement and scrutiny. Every missing note, every whispered line, every unclear phrase sparked debates about meaning and intent. Were these fragments accidental glimpses of Michael's private world, or carefully curated hints designed to intrigue, confuse, and enthrall? The hunt intensified when fans began cross-referencing lyrics with Michael's known public statements, biographical accounts, and historical events. Some findings were astonishing. Lines that seemed like abstract musings suddenly appeared to correspond with personal tragedies, relationships, or challenges he had faced. The sense of discovery was intoxicating, yet frustratingly incomplete. The full narrative remained tantalizingly out of reach. The obsession with uncovering the hidden Michael revealed a broader truth. The demos were more than songs. They were invitations. Invitations to see Michael Jackson not just as the global icon, but as a human being, grappling with love, betrayal, and the immense burden of fame. And just when the excitement peaked, one final fragment surfaced, one line so cryptic, so charged with meaning, that fans realized the ultimate revelation was still ahead, waiting to shake their understanding of the King of Pop entirely. Beneath the speculation and theories lies the undeniable heart of Michael Jackson's unreleased demos, the emotional truth. For all their mystery, the lyrics resonate with raw human feelings, vulnerability, grief, longing, and a relentless search for connection. The songs reveal a Michael Jackson seldom glimpsed in public. Lines about loneliness in rooms full of admiration, of smiles that mask betrayal, and of applause that cannot fill a void, expose the weight of living under constant scrutiny. These were not mere lyrical flourishes. They were intimate reflections, windows into a soul grappling with the paradox of fame, adored by millions, yet profoundly isolated. Certain demos speak of heartbreak with stunning clarity. They recount moments of loss and longing, whether for love, understanding, or acceptance. Some lyrics suggest relationships that were private, fleeting, or fraught with secrecy. Unlike his public hits, which often celebrate joy or romance in broad strokes, these songs offer precise emotional snapshots, glimpses of vulnerability captured in melody, rhythm, and phrasing. Yet the demos are not exclusively sorrowful. Interwoven with sadness are moments of triumph, defiance, and hope. Michael's voice, even in these rough, unfinished recordings, conveys resilience. Lines about rising above betrayal, about creating art in the face of adversity, and about the enduring power of expression hint at a man who, despite isolation and struggle, refused to surrender to despair. The emotional depth of these lyrics also reveals Michael's genius. His ability to convey complex, nuanced emotions through music, even in incomplete tracks, is breathtaking. A single verse can evoke empathy, heartbreak, and admiration simultaneously. The songs function as a bridge between artist and listener, drawing us into his inner world with an intimacy that few ever expected. Some of the most powerful lyrics focus on trust and betrayal. Michael seems to chronicle relationships with precision, noting moments when loyalty faltered and alliances crumbled. Fans and collaborators alike have described these lines as haunting, precise, and unsettling in their honesty. They suggest a man keenly aware of human frailty, yet willing to confront it through his art. Other tracks explore identity, creativity, and legacy. Michael's struggle to balance personal truth with public expectation is evident in subtle metaphors and repeated motifs. Lines hint at the tension between who he truly was and the image the world demanded he maintain. The demos, therefore, serve as a kind of emotional journal, a record of thoughts and feelings too delicate, too personal, or too complex for mainstream release. And just when the emotional intensity seems complete, certain lyrics leave listeners breathless. One line, delivered in a barely audible whisper, captures the paradox of a life lived in extremes, of adoration and isolation, of triumph and disappointment, of genius and vulnerability. The revelation is immediate. Michael Jackson's unreleased demos are more than music. They are a testament to a human life, as complex, fragile, and extraordinary as any ever recorded. Yet, the demos end unresolved, leaving listeners suspended in tension. The questions remain. How much more did Michael reveal in these hidden tracks? And what truths are still buried, waiting for discovery in the remaining tapes of his private vault? The emotional resonance lingers, compelling, haunting, and impossible to ignore, setting the stage for the revelations yet to come. As the unreleased demos circulated, controversies erupted. Debates over their meaning, authenticity, and the ethical questions surrounding their discovery. Every lyric, every whispered phrase seemed to provoke strong reactions. Fans and scholars alike debated whether these tracks were sacred confessions, playful experimentation, or evidence of truths that had long been concealed. Some lyrics directly contradicted the public narrative Michael had carefully curated throughout his life. Lines hinted at personal betrayals that the world had never known, at frustrations with those closest to him, and at moments of disillusionment with fame itself. One demo spoke of smiles that mask knives, an image so sharp, so intimate, that listeners could almost feel the sting of betrayal in Michael's own voice. Critics argued over whether the lyrics should even be analyzed. Were they drafts, unfinished sketches, or raw, unfiltered emotions meant never to be heard? Some insisted that interpreting these lines risked misrepresenting Michael, while others claimed that the music was a revelation, a glimpse of the man behind the icon. The tension between respect for privacy and the allure of discovery created a cultural debate that rivaled the controversy surrounding any of his public scandals. Among the revelations were lyrics that appeared to address legal battles, disputes with management, and personal grievances that had never made headlines. Fans speculated that certain verses were coded references to events in Michael's life, from complex relationships with collaborators to tense encounters with the media. Each interpretation created new waves of fascination and new questions. The more these demos were analyzed, the clearer it became that Michael Jackson's unreleased work wasn't just music. It was a narrative, a hidden autobiography. Some lyrics hinted at isolation so profound it was almost unbearable, while others revealed moments of tenderness, humor, and hope. The contrasts were striking. The king of pop, celebrated for his perfection, could be vulnerable, flawed, and achingly human, all at once. Even collaborators admitted that some demos contained content they had never expected, Certain lyrics were so personal, so emotionally raw, that they reportedly brought listeners to tears. They spoke of fears unspoken, of friendships fractured, of love lost, and of genius weighed down by the demands of a world that could admire and misunderstand in equal measure. The revelations were stunning, leaving the public both enthralled and unsettled, but perhaps the most controversial aspect was what remained unsaid. For every lyric revealed, for every emotion exposed, there were countless others still locked away in the vault. Questions multiplied. What secrets had Michael never shared with the world? What truths were deliberately kept from public ears, and why? The suspense was unbearable. Every new snippet suggested answers, yet the complete story remained tantalizingly out of reach, leaving fans and historians suspended in a web of mystery, intrigue, and awe. The section closed on a haunting cliffhanger. Somewhere in the vault, Michael's most intimate thoughts awaited discovery. Lines that could challenge everything the world thought it knew about him still lay hidden. The question echoed in the minds of everyone listening. What revelations were still waiting in the shadows, and who would be brave enough to uncover them? And then it happened, the moment fans had been waiting for. One demo surfaced that demanded attention, commanding silence in every room it played. It was a piece so emotionally charged, so intimate, that it felt as though Michael himself were speaking directly to the listener, revealing truths no one had ever dared to imagine. The lyrics were a tapestry of confession and reflection. Michael sang of trust broken, of friendships shattered by greed or misunderstanding, and of the crushing isolation of fame. Every note carried weight. Every word was deliberate. In these demos, the king of pop was not performing for the world. He was performing for himself, and for anyone willing to truly listen. One line, in particular, sent shockwaves through the fan community. "I gave my voice to the world, but no one heard my heart." It encapsulated everything these demos represented: the tension between public adoration and private loneliness, between the flawless image projected on stage and the raw human inside. The revelation was both heartbreaking and illuminating. It was Michael Jackson as the world had never known him, brilliant, vulnerable, and achingly human. The most astonishing aspect of this demo was its clarity. Unlike other unreleased tracks, which often contained cryptic metaphors and hidden messages, this song seemed direct, almost daring the listener to understand. Michael confronted his struggles openly: the betrayals, the disappointments, the moments when fame became a cage rather than a reward. Each lyric was a revelation, each melody a testament to the genius of a man navigating an impossible life. And yet, even in its openness, mystery remained. Lines hinted at experiences that no one could fully verify, relationships that had never been public, personal tragedies that had been carefully concealed, and creative conflicts that had shaped the music he left behind. The listener was left with awe, empathy, and a profound sense of curiosity. Who had truly understood Michael Jackson? Who had seen the man behind the legend? Perhaps the most shocking revelation was how the lyrics intertwined personal reflection with social commentary. Michael addressed not only his own experiences, but also the pressures, injustices, and superficiality of the world around him. He sang of a society quick to judge, slow to understand, and obsessed with spectacle over substance. The song became more than a confession. It became a critique, a legacy, a warning, and a plea all at once. As the final verses played, a sense of culmination built, reaching an emotional peak. The music carried the weight of decades, the struggles of a man whose life had been lived in the public eye, yet whose heart remained private. By the end of the demo, listeners understood why these songs had been hidden. They weren't just music, they were Michael's truth, raw and unfiltered. A revelation so powerful it demanded silence and reflection. And just when it seemed the story could conclude, the ending of the demo left a haunting question. A single whispered line, barely audible, suggested there was more. More confessions, more revelations, more untold truths lying in wait. The world had glimpsed the hidden Michael, but the vault still held secrets, leaving an echoing suspense that would haunt fans and historians alike. This was the climax, the moment where the promise of discovery collided with reality. The unreleased lyrics had delivered on every hint, every teaser, every mystery introduced at the beginning. But they also left room for the imagination, for curiosity, and for awe. Michael Jackson's hidden voice, once buried in silence, had finally spoken, and it was impossible to ignore. The vault is silent once again, but the echoes of Michael Jackson's unreleased demos linger in our minds. They remind us that behind the dazzling performances, the record-breaking albums, and the global adoration, there existed a man, complex, vulnerable, and endlessly creative, whose inner world had remained largely hidden. These hidden lyrics, now partially unveiled, offer a glimpse into that world, a window into a life both extraordinary and achingly human. As we reflect on what has been revealed, one thing becomes clear. The demos were never just music. They were letters to the future, messages encoded in melody and lyric, a record of experiences, feelings, and truths too delicate to broadcast to the masses during his lifetime. Some lines expressed heartbreak so profound it resonates decades later. Others radiated hope, defiance, and the joy of creation. Together, they form a tapestry of emotion, painting a portrait of Michael Jackson not as a flawless icon, but as a human being navigating the impossible intersections of fame, artistry, and identity. The emotional impact of these hidden lyrics is undeniable. They allow us to hear the man behind the legend, a Michael Jackson whose genius was inseparable from his vulnerability. One lyric speaks of isolation in rooms full of applause. Another hints at private betrayals by those he trusted most. Some songs are whispers of intimate love, others confessions of doubt and disappointment. In each there is honesty so raw that the listener cannot help but feel a profound connection to his humanity. Yet with every revelation the mystery deepens. For every lyric we hear there are countless others still locked away, silent within the vault. What stories remain untold? What personal struggles, triumphs, and confessions have yet to reach the world? The tension is both exhilarating and haunting. It reminds us that even the greatest of artists can keep secrets, and that the true depth of a creative life may only be glimpsed through fragments and hints, never fully grasped. The demos also serve as a mirror to ourselves. In hearing Michael's vulnerabilities, his frustrations, and his joys, we are reminded of our own struggles to reconcile who we are with how the world perceives us. Fame magnifies, but the core human experiences, love, fear, betrayal, hope, are universal. Michael's hidden lyrics, though born from the extraordinary life of a superstar, resonate with the ordinary truths of human existence. They remind us that even those who seem larger than life are, at their core, deeply human. There is a cinematic poetry to the way these songs were withheld and then discovered. The vault, once silent and impenetrable, became a space of suspense and speculation, drawing fans, collaborators, and historians into a decades-long quest to understand the man behind the music. The eventual discovery of the demos was both revelation and question, fulfillment and new mystery. The process mirrors the arc of life itself. We may glimpse the truth, but some fragments remain forever elusive, compelling us to continue searching. As the final notes of the last discovered demo fade, the emotional resonance lingers. It is a mixture of awe, sorrow, and admiration. Michael Jackson's genius is undeniable, but it is his humanity, revealed in these hidden lyrics, that leaves the deepest mark. The demos are not just a celebration of talent. They are a testament to resilience, vulnerability, and the enduring power of artistic expression. In their silence and their melody, they invite reflection, empathy, and understanding. Fans will continue to debate, analyze, and speculate. Scholars will continue to study the patterns, the cryptic phrases, and the emotional depth of the songs. Yet, for all the analysis, one truth remains. These demos give us a Michael Jackson who was at once fragile and fearless, private yet profoundly expressive, human in ways that transcend legend. And it is in this delicate balance between vulnerability and genius that the magic of the unreleased lyrics endures. Perhaps the most cinematic aspect of this story is not the music itself, but the way it shapes our understanding of legacy. Michael Jackson's life was lived in public, yet these hidden songs remind us that every life contains unspoken truths, unshared experiences, and moments of profound intimacy that may never be fully known. They are a meditation on the duality of existence, the public persona and the private soul, the legend and the human, the applause and the silence. And in the end, the vault remains. But it is no longer simply a place of mystery. It is a monument to human creativity, a repository of emotion, and a reminder that some truths are too delicate to be rushed into the world. Michael's unreleased lyrics ask us to listen carefully, to feel deeply, and to recognize that the measure of a person's life is not only in what is shown to the world, but in what is quietly preserved, waiting for discovery. As we close this exploration, the haunting, lingering question remains: how many more secrets lie dormant in the shadows of Michael Jackson's genius? How many more stories, emotions, and confessions are waiting for the day they will finally be heard? The demos we have uncovered are a beginning, not an end, a testament to a life lived in brilliance, and a reminder that the vault and the man within it still has more to reveal. And so we are left with awe, with wonder, and with a profound sense of connection. Michael Jackson's unreleased lyrics are more than music. They are an invitation to understand, to reflect, and to experience the emotional depth of a genius who dared to reveal the world within himself. The story of the vault is not finished. It lives in each note, each lyric, and each listener who dares to hear the hidden voice of the king of pop. In the silence that follows, one truth is undeniable: Michael Jackson's music, public and hidden, continues to speak, to haunt, and to inspire. And for those willing to listen, the vault will never truly be empty. Its echoes, like the man himself, remain immortal,